Executive, if you're ready, John, just to take the roll call on the summons of meetings, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. To all members of Governance and Strategic Planning Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee to be held remotely today, Tuesday, the 1st of February at 4 o'clock. Alderman Breslin.
Here, John.
Alderman Devaney.
Here, John.
Alderman McClintock.
Here, John.
Alderman McCready. Alderman McCready. Councillor John Boyle.
Here.
Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Doyle. Councillor Doyle. Councillor Duffy.
He's going to be late, John.
Thank you. Councillor Farrell.
Here.
Councillor Fleming.
And Shaw, John.
Councillor Heaney.
Sure, John.
Councillor McHugh. Councillor McHugh. Councillor Mooney.
Here, John.
Councillor Riley. Thank you, members.
Thank you, John. Members, the next item is the broadcasting statement, which I'll just read out for the record. I would like to remind everyone here who is in remote attendance that this meeting will be broadcast live via the Council's YouTube channel and will be available for viewing by the public and media. The broadcast will also be available for repeated viewing at a later date. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with Council protocol. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have your mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. By participating in this meeting, you are consenting to be filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. A copy of the Council's privacy notice is available on the Council website, www.derrystrabane.com. Thanks, Councillor Doyle, in the chat box for marking yourself in attendance. Members, any declarations of interest for today's business? If you can call them out now or put them in the chat box, please. And if not, we'll move on then to item 5, which is the deputation to hear from the Energy Regulator, Mr. John French, and Mr. Kevin Shields, the Retail Director. This is arising out of Council discussion back, as you can see in the minute, C465/21 and C489/21. So I'm going to hand over to John and to Kevin. I'm happy to take the presentation and then open it up to questions afterwards. Members, you will be aware that this item is very timely today because there has been an announcement in today's news cycles about an increase in gas prices for the various different 10 towns across Northern Ireland. So there is an updated presentation which has been circulated beyond the ones that were given to us previously. So if you haven't received that, it's in your email pack from the committee staff out earlier today. So I'm going to hand over to John and to Kevin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you today. We've got as your chair has outlined, we've got a presentation for you, and I'm just going to try and share the slides here. And happy to take any questions if anything's unclear, and as we go through it. So hopefully everyone can see that now. Is that right? Great. So in terms of who and what we are as the utility regulator, we're a statutory body, so everything we do is set out in statute, and how we do it is set out in statute. Our background is we're an independent, non-ministerial government department, and we're responsible for economically regulating Northern Ireland's electricity, gas, water and sewerage industries. We have a board and a chair that are appointed by the Department of Finance, and we're directly accountable to the Northern Ireland Assembly. In terms of our principal duties in energy, In electricity, we have the duty of protecting the interests of electricity consumers in relation to price and quality of service by promoting effective competition where appropriate. Additionally, in gas, we have a duty to promote the development of an efficient, economic and coordinated gas industry across Northern Ireland. And finally, in water, our statutory duty is to protect the interests of water and sewerage consumers by promoting an efficient industry and delivering high quality services. So that's the background to where we are. In terms of energy prices, which is the main topic today, it has been mainly driven by the price of wholesale costs, and especially on the gas market. So this graph is a graph that was taken in mid-December, and I think it's a good graph just in terms of trying to show how historic these price movements are. So gas prices historically are in and around the 50 pence mark, which you can see on the axis there. And gas prices generally move historically winter to winter, depending on how cold the winter has been. But what we saw this year was as we came out of the winter, especially into the July period, gas prices started to rise to unprecedented levels. So you can just see there in terms of how gas prices have absolutely shot up from July this year, and mainly this is down to the conflict or the perceived conflict between Ukraine and Russia, and the lack of the reduction in gas supplies from Russia into Europe. So gas prices have significantly changed. So as you can see in the table to the side, the lowest gas prices were 8 pence. But as you can see from this, over the last year, gas prices have ranged from 39 pence to just before Christmas on the 21st of December, they rose up to £4.71 per therm. Therm is the unit in which gas is bought in. The next graph is just kind of to show you how these price movements and price announcements have occurred over this year. So this is a graph taken from Reuters at close of play on the 31st of January. So as I mentioned, gas prices are normally around the 50 pence mark on average, but this year it's been an unprecedented year. So this graph shows buying gas today for delivery tomorrow, which is known as the day ahead market. And you can see where prices were back in 2020 time and then post-pandemic. But unfortunately, as we came out of the pandemic, manufacturing started to normalize and the price announcements started to move up. So in terms of Firmus, which is in the 10 town area, which covers Derry, Londonderry, we saw that movement from that price up to the April announcement of about an 18% increase. And then, as I say, the gas price moved to an unprecedented level. So it moved to what was a historic high there in October 2021. We had both Firmus and SSE making announcements of around a 35% increase. And then, as you can see, as the talks between President Biden and President Putin broke down, and gas supplies through the Ukraine and then more latterly through Poland and Belarus have significantly reduced, the price of natural gas on the wholesale market has significantly risen to that peak that we saw there at £4.71 just before Christmas. It has come back down again slightly, and at the moment it's trading around the £2.20 mark, but that is significantly higher than a normal price of 50 pence. Now, if there's any graph to watch, it's this graph in terms of how gas prices are playing going forward. So this graph plots out if an individual was buying gas on a certain day for a 12-month period, which is the line in blue, is for a 24-month period, which is the line in green, and a 36-month period on the line in orange. And as you can see how that's played out over the last 5, 6 months, 7 months, that the gas price, unfortunately, for a normal gas price, a normal year would be around the 50 pence mark. We're seeing gas being traded today on the 36-month basis, well above the £1 mark, about £1.30. So this price rise that we're seeing and experience, not just here in Northern Ireland, but across Europe, isn't just a blip. It's a spike, and it's a prolonged spike. Gas companies are generally buying their gas for delivery to consumers 24 months, 18 months before they actually are on a laddered strategy. So they'll buy 10 odd percent every month coming in for those in the preceding 18 months. So some of this, we can see the gas prices are going to remain high, at least for the next 36 months. And I know, and we'll probably get into that in terms of the conversation we have. We've seen that the Department for Communities has recently announced a £55 million fund to help households, those on benefits, get a payment of £200. And that potentially helps consumers through this winter, but it's how then consumers get through the next winter and potentially the following winter with those high prices. So this is extremely concerning, and we're trying to talk to government to see what more can be done. The role of the regulator within this is to ensure that the companies buy gas and sell gas in an efficient manner. We cannot do anything about the underlying gas market. And it's in terms of Firmus's price that they announced today, it's just around 3/4 of their bill is made up of the wholesale gas price. And that's why these price movements that we've experienced since July this year have had such a big such a big impression on consumer prices. And this is just trying to show you the reason why gas prices in Europe have increased. It is simply supply and demand. So although we don't get our gas from Russia, most of our gas is North Sea gas, either from the UK continental shelf or from Norwegian shelves. The fact that 30 to 40% of European gas comes from Russia, it then has a pricing impact on the European market, which is the Dutch market, that then plays into the UK market where Ireland buys its gas from. These graphs just at the bottom just show you how gas supplies through the Ukrainian pipeline have stopped. As you can see, gas flows from 2021, that reduction. But then more recently, in the last couple of weeks and months, Russian gas flows on the Yamal pipeline, which flows through Poland and Belarus, also, as you can see, have significantly reduced. So the gas is just simply, unfortunately, supply and demand through Europe. Now, how that's played out into domestic prices, this is the price for Greater Belfast and those customers on the gas to the west. So likes of Strabane and are all on the regulated prices, SSE electricity. As you can see, SSE electricity, the price has gone up, and their current bill for an average household is £626. Now, SSE are a big company on the London Stock Exchange, so they have been able to deal with some of the price rises and probably better than you've seen Firmus Energy. So this is where Firmus were up prior to the announcement today. We couldn't release the slides early because that was a confidential announcement. But as we've announced the announcement today, Firmus need to increase their tariffs from the 24th of February to £1,293 for the average household. So you can see that has significantly increased from where it was just after the pandemic at £440 for the average household. But roughly the average bill has been around £650 if you take all the various price movements. In terms of where Firmus are, some people ask whether the companies are both SSE and Firmus are profiteering. We regulate the profit margin here in Northern Ireland to an average of 2%. So the companies cannot make more than 2% on the price they're charging. The backstop to that is that the Competition and Markets Authority, the super regulator for the UK, sets that the average price margin, the lowest price margin that any regulator can provide is 1.9%. So we feel that 2% is probably the lowest due to the size and scale of Northern Ireland that we can get away with. And just for comparison, that compares to a price margin within the GB price cap of 3% and one in Ireland of 3.5%. I'm happy to come back to this. So this is currently where we find ourselves in terms of Firmus Energy currently is an average bill of £968, and from the 24th of February will go up to just under £1,300. SSE Electricity, as you saw from the previous graph, haven't moved from the 1st of October, and they're currently at 626, which is equivalent to the GB price cap. And currently the price from Bord Gosh, which is the main, which is owned by Centrica, British Gas, their main price is just under £900 for the average household. Now, some of this is timing because Great Britain, in terms of its price cap, will move the announcement will be on the 7th of February. And overall, they're believing that the basket of energy for both electricity and gas, that's how they announce it, will be around £2,000. So probably by the end of the price announcements, the prices in Northern Ireland will virtually be the same as GBs after the announcements in the next couple of weeks. In terms of electricity, slightly a better picture, not much, but slightly. Power and I is the only regulated tariff, so they're the only company we regulate because we regulate the incumbent suppliers. So the old electricity board, Power and I have the largest market share, and they increased their prices by just over 21% from the 1st of January. And you can see that the average Power and I bill is about £740 compared to £810 in GB, and just under £880 in the Republic of Ireland with Electric Ireland. We don't regulate the other tariffs in Northern Ireland. It is European policy that competition is the best form of regulation. So where possible, regulators are deemed to encourage competition. So what we do in Northern Ireland is we regulate Power and I, and then the other companies there try to compete against that Power and I tariff. So you'll have seen the price movements that Budget Energy have had, SSE and the other companies, Electric Ireland, Click against that. What's clearly coming through is the bigger companies, the likes of SSE Electricity, Electric Ireland, who are owned by ESB in Ireland, and Power and I, the bigger groups that both have electricity supply companies and electricity generation companies are able to weather the wholesale costs better than their counterparts, which just have supply elements to them. As you can see from your slide, like this is kind of just showing you how prices have moved up and down with the regulated tariff of of Power and I, and the price margin that they make there in terms of profit is 2.2%. This table is just showing you that quite often people say electricity prices are more expensive in Northern Ireland, but as you can see, the price of electricity for domestic households has been cheaper in Northern Ireland since about 2014 compared to our two nearest neighbours. And this is kind of just a dashboard to show you where electricity prices have moved in that period. This is the wholesale market prices that we receive from the single electricity. Northern Ireland and Ireland come together in terms of the electricity market, and there's one market for the sale of electricity, the single electricity market. So everything's priced in euros. So there is some currency fluctuation in this as well. But as you can see, back in December 2020 on the wholesale market, buying on the day ahead market, that's the DAM, electricity prices were just under €60 per megawatt hour. That's the unit by which electricity is sold. Unfortunately, with the increase, as we've come out of COVID, there's been an increased demand on the system, which has led to an increase in usage of electricity. Unfortunately, we've seen in many months this year that there's been lower wind generation than previous years. So wind is the cheapest form of electricity generation. But when the wind doesn't blow, we're having to use gas. And more often with the high price of gas that we've just discussed, we're using coal, and on very windless days, we're using oil to power our electricity systems. So unfortunately, what we've seen this year is demand's increased. We've had lower wind generation, and then the conventional power stations that use gas, coal, and oil have had the feed that they use, the fuel that they use, has become much more expensive, and this has led to the increased prices in electricity that we've seen in the last 12 months. That's kind of where we are in terms of the utility regulator. We don't regulate heating oil or petrol and diesel, but we had some slides from the Consumer Council that were given to us the other day, but that just kind of shows you for households where petrol and diesel is also rising behind this, so it's not unique to natural gas or electricity. And there, in terms of heating oil, 60 to 70% of households in Northern Ireland still use heating oil as their main heating source. But as you can see, for heating oil bills last year, last January, they were about £180 per 500 litre fill, where they're just under £300 for a 500 litre fill. So unfortunately, prices are increasing right across the board. But Chair, that was just the canter through of our slides, and just to kind of give a background of where prices have moved, both on a domestic and a scale. I guess the other thing we should highlight is that presentation was very much around what domestic consumers are experiencing. Most small and medium-sized businesses will be are on annual bills, annual tariffs. So they generally run from March to March. So, sorry, April to April. So they will just be about to be renegotiating their prices for the coming year. And some of those companies obviously haven't seen the price increases that domestic customers have seen in the last 12 months. So we are expecting to see price shocks also in that market. Sorry, we're prophets of doom today, but very happy to take questions.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you very much for the detailed presentation, and for being able to update it today with the developments that happened earlier this morning, and then brief us all here this afternoon. Thanks to Kevin for joining as well. Members, I'll open it up to the floor for some questions to the two contributors. First indicated speaker in the chat box is Councillor Heaney. Go ahead, Conor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thank you, John, for the presentation. If not quite depressing, as you say, for the current circumstances. It's clear this cost of living crisis is absolutely out of control, and all of our constituents and all the people that we represent are really, really suffering and struggling at the minute. So, I suppose a couple of brief questions. Like you mentioned, in terms of European policy and competition being the best method of regulation in some ways, I'm just asking, is do you agree with that, and is that does that work? And secondly, again, it was a bit further depressing that you're even talking for the next 36 months. This is likely to continue, and that's even without a further escalation in this crisis that's happening between Ukraine and Russia, largely out of all of our control, and not being helped by the approach of the West, to be fair, in terms of ramping the situation up. But if there is a further escalation in that situation, what is your view in terms of where this might go, and what the impact might be on households here in this city and district?
Thanks for that, Conor. John and Kev, and we usually take a couple of questions first and then bring us in, if that's okay. It's just moves things along a bit quicker. Councillor Doyle next. Go ahead, Emmett.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, John and Martin, for coming before us today. Two questions mainly. One, John, I understand from regulations point of view that when you make a determination in terms of price increase, that has to be okayed by the Minister for the Economy. Could you give us a bit more information on that process, and particularly if the Minister is able to decline that determination? And the second aspect of it is because we've seen in recent months the inability of the executive to address these issues by supporting people rather than giving money back to the centre. Have you at any time been approached by, for example, the Department for the Communities with regards to the support that they might provide to people? And what I mean by that is, you've been able to give us today a fairly comprehensive view in terms of price increases. You've been able to tell us that for the next 36 months or so, there's going to be very, very high prices for consumers. Have they approached you in any way to help model out how they are going to assist people? Really appreciate your time again, folks. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Doyle. Next indicated speakers, Councillor Farrell. Go ahead, Rory.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, gentlemen, for attending today. I would agree that it is timely. I was not expecting Firmus to have yet another price hike. Again, the fourth in the last year, which has led to a doubling of gas prices for the average household, specifically here in the 10 towns area. Spiraling energy costs they're having a crippling effect on households right across the north, and obviously Firmus have dropped a further bomb today regarding that. And there's not much we can do about the global gas supply. There's not much we can do about wholesale prices, and I doubt we're going to resolve the geopolitical crisis between Russia and Ukraine here today. But Stormont has a role to play in this, and whilst I welcome Deirdre Hargey's announcement about the £55 million for the emergency energy support scheme, that's going to help households on means tested benefits right across the north. My honest assessment of that is that these payments are coming out in mid-March, and this next price hike from Firmus is happening on the 24th of February. So the payments need to go out sooner. And I also have concern about the scheme itself. Households right across the north that are not on means tested benefits don't benefit from the scheme, but they face the same price hikes. They face the same pain in terms of funding energy bills, but they've been forgotten about by this scheme. They've been excluded. They're exempt, and they will rightly think, we have to pay energy bills as well. Our gas prices are going up, but there's no support. And I know that's a sort of political speech, but I've got a proposal if the chair would accept it. Chair.
Okay, Councillor Farrell, do you have your proposal typed up or written up? If you do, can you pop it in the chat box here for people to see? Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah, so it's in the chat box there, Chair. So it calls for the Minister for Communities to accelerate the rollout of the Energy Payment Support Scheme, because, as I said, people are getting paid this in mid-March after this latest price hike. And I think it is sensible that this is rolled out as soon as possible so people can actually benefit with, I know it's a misnomer, but the low prices now instead of waiting until after they go up again. And I do think there is scope. People on means tested benefits definitely need this support, but there are a swathe of people out there that aren't on means tested benefits They're working in minimum wage jobs or low paid jobs that don't get a penny of support. There's no recognition for the cost that they have to face or their increased energy bills. So we do think, there should be there's scope within that scheme to extend and expand the eligibility criteria. So that's what I'm proposing here today, Chair. And I see Councillor Mooney has seconded. Thank you.
Right, thanks for that, Councillor Farrell. We'll go through the rest of the indicated speakers and allow John and Kevin to come back with the answers to the questions that have already been asked before we move to a vote or debate on the actual proposal on the floor. So Councillor Mooney, you're next to indicate to speak. I know you've seconded the proposal this year, but do you want to speak as well, Councillor Mooney?
Yeah, I do, Chair. Just one or two questions, and like to thank the previous speakers. Like to thank John for giving the presentation. It's quite fortuitous today because about 20 minutes ago, about 24, I just received a phone call there, and it was from a local constituent, exactly on the price raise in Firmus today. And but what my local constituent was asking was basically, and I think he may have answered it briefly in the presentation, but his letter from Firmus was saying that his raise is 33.57, but he saw on BBC News that the raise in Belfast was about 19.5%. Am I right in thinking that that's because it's two different operators, i.e. Firmus and SSE Electricity, and they're bigger, so they can obviously absorb the costs, and obviously the phone call was quite exercising because he was very annoyed about the further pay raise. But if you could just give me a bit more detail about that, which will enable me to go back and answer them fully. But the second point would be as well, I was just thinking about this here when I was listening to the presentation. What would happen if one of the companies went bust or folded during this crisis? How would you come in, or what role would you have as regulator if one of the companies went bust, and what would happen to the customers in the event of that? But thank you, John, and I look forward to hearing from you in a while. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Mooney. I have two more indicated speakers, and I'll go back to the regulator. So, Councillor Harkin, and then Alderman Devaney. Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of the committee, so thanks for letting me in.
Speaker.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Harkin.
Okay, thank you.
Can you go on to mute, please? Thanks.
Thanks very much. Yeah, thank you, John, for coming in today. We really appreciate it. And as others have said, it's unfortunately timely, but it would have been timely any time over the last year, to be quite honest, in terms of what we've been dealing with skyrocketing energy costs. And I think everybody has spoken to the fact that the costs that people are facing before this announcement today are already too much. We know that a lot of people are paying their bills using credit. A lot of people have taken out loans to pay their bills. A lot of people use their Christmas money to try and stock up on their energy for the house, on their electricity. And unfortunately, that's run out for people. So it's very, very bad news, alarming news that this is happening. And look, I appreciate you going through it very, very, very detailed in terms of what's happening in the Ukraine with Russia and all of that. And I think from my perspective as a socialist, this is about international capitalism. You mentioned supply and demand. This is really about there's plenty of energy. It's about how it's distributed. It's about how states and corporations are using this to profiteer and obviously to manipulate things. And they don't care if they're punishing ordinary people as a result. And that's certainly happening here, but it's happening in many other places. So in terms of you as a utility regulator, one question I have is, what's the utility right now of the utility regulator? Because like people are getting absolutely hammered, and I'm not blaming you. I think that this is a utility regulator is necessary here in the north because we've had a privatized energy market, and I know there's Sinn Féin and SDLP on people here questioning that today, but this is the type of privatization that all the executive parties have backed now for decades and told us privatization's good because it creates competition and and choice and all this, and then this is the outcome. So now that our prices are going to be the same as across the water, like what to be honest has the utility regulator been able to do to protect people? So that's one question. It's not about your role, it's more about the role that you find yourself in. And so look, I know you're saying that companies have caps on them in terms of profits. But if I was to say to you, right, let's get rid of now of the private market and we'll have a publicly owned energy company to try and mitigate these kind of price increases, I doubt it's the case that the owners of all these companies would turn around and say there's no profit in this for us. So there you go, we'll just hand it over to be run like the NHS. I very much doubt that, because I think that there are huge profits for the bosses and the shareholders of many of these companies. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in it, to be quite honest. And then the last point is, I mean, you mentioned in your presentation about that the energy payment scheme that's been set up. And as others have said, look, it's completely inadequate. It doesn't cover people. I mean, the Stormont Executive, most of the Stormont Executive parties, Sinn Féin, SDLP, DUP, have refused to back the call for a hardship emergency. They are also, now when we have these massive energy increases, they're refusing to support wage increases for workers. So there's a lot of hypocrisy here that's very, very clear. There's very little action the adequate action that Stormont's taken. So if you're in a position to, I would like to hear maybe your view on what else could be done, because it's not the case that we didn't know that this was going to come. We were told months ago that there would be further increases. So it seems to me that there's been very little pre-planning by the Stormont Executive for this, and it's now a scramble. And there'll be an outcry, and it'll probably force them to do something, but once again, it'll be inadequate. So thank you again, John, for coming in and taking our questions and points.
Okay, Councillor Harkin. Alderman Devaney, go ahead, Marsh.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in, and just welcome John and Kevin, and thank John for the presentation. And John, I think quite rightly, it is a very depressing situation when we look at the price hikes in energy across Northern Ireland at the present time, and we're not out of the woods yet. They're probably the worst. There are more to come yet. But look, I do agree that look, we won't sort out the global gas supply and costs and stuff and around that today. I do agree with that, but I do worry that we're moving into a very, very serious crisis here, with many households across the council area, our own council area, and across Northern Ireland, and hitting their homes. And I've read the proposal here, and look, I have no problem in supporting it. I do believe, look, we welcome the 50 million that has been come out, but look, that only touches for those on means tested benefits. But there are, what we know out there, and we all know as we class them as the working poor, who are finding it very, very difficult in the present circumstances with the serious rise in energy prices across the board, whether it be electricity, gas, or even heating oil. We heard heating oil went up from £180 this time last year to touching around 300 for 500 litres. And that's evident that is going to have a crippling effect on households heating their houses. But Chair, look, I on the proposal, I have no problem with the issue, but I do believe that our Northern Ireland Assembly has more to do here in dealing with the crisis that we're in at the moment. But thanks, Chair, for allowing me in.
Okay, thanks, Marsh, for that, and thanks to all the councillors and aldermen for contributing this afternoon. I'm going to hand back to John and to Kevin to field some of those questions, please.
Okay, thanks. Well, I'll take a first shot at it, if it's all right, and then if Kevin wants to try and sweep anything up that he feels I've missed, if that's okay.
There's an awful lot there, John, so I'm happy to split it whatever way you want and pick up a lot of those things. I was taking notes there, so I think we can step through the questions, okay?
We'll do our best, and if we do miss anything, please do shout. I guess none of us want to be here. Going back to this isn't, I've been in the job just over a year. This isn't why I wanted to do the job. This is, we are where we are kind of thing. I think we need to be very frank of where we are and what the projections are going forward. And I think we've tried to do that. To take no pleasure out of doing that, but it is very clear that this is a crisis that probably none of us have experienced. Well, I haven't experienced in my lifetime, and the time that probably this last was happened, something similar to this, was the 1970s oil crisis, oil shocks. We are in a period of really high prices that's going to affect, people on benefits, the working fuel poor, businesses, and I think we're very well aware of that, and it's upsetting to see the impacts that this will have, not potentially will have. In terms of what the role of the utility regulator is, our role is, as I said at the start, set out in statute. Our role is to make sure the market works effectively and efficiently. But this market, we can show where we've saved over this year 5% here, 10% there on network charges, making sure the companies have done their role right and everything like that. But that's just been dwarfed by the rises that we've mentioned in wholesale prices. So we do work with the companies. We do check their figures. The companies that we've mentioned in terms of Firmus, SSE, Electricity, and Power and I, they cannot just put price increases through willy-nilly. They've got to check with us. They've got to prove to us that they're running the business effectively. So we look at every part of their business, whether it's their staffing levels, how they run their company effectively, the profit levels we do. So we look at everything within their business. But unfortunately, this year, what we've seen is literally the wholesale costs of the market. In terms of, I think it was Councillor Harkin's question about energy supplies, price and supply and demand. It is simply a supply and demand issue. That the issue isn't it. The issue for the UK and Ireland isn't one of security of supply. The gas should flow through our pipes. Now, for other countries, that's different. Italy is struggling. The old Eastern European countries, they're struggling with their supplies as they come direct from Europe. But how the supply and demand affects the UK and Ireland is that all the global markets are interconnected. So the price for gas is risen significantly more in European markets, which is mainly the Dutch market where the wholesale occurs, and then that plays back to the UK market. So although in terms of supply and demand, there should be no issues in terms of the gas flowing through the pipes, it does affect, unfortunately, the final price that consumers and businesses are paying. In terms of the difference between Belfast and the 10 towns, some of that is a timing issue, and it is down to the size of the companies. SSE, Electricity are a bigger company, and they need, if the mathematics was undertaken today, they would need significant increases up to probably the same levels that firms have. But they are able to work with the system to try and spread that out. But at the end of the day, if you look back over the last 10 years, there's only been a 2 to 3% difference between Firmus's and SSE's price in Belfast compared to the 10 towns. So it will, over time, I know it's cold comfort today, but over time it will wind itself out, and consumers will be paying the same price. In terms of what we could be doing more with Stormont and the Northern Ireland Executive, we've been briefing everybody. Some of these price increases could have been seen from July, August time going forward. We've been very clear with them that this is occurring and this isn't a blip. Now, the 55 million does help some consumers through this winter period. We recognise it doesn't help all, especially the working poor. But I suppose what we need now is very much to say that we're fortunate as well. We've had a mild winter, but going forward, this is going to last, as we said, for at least 36 months. We need to start working together in partnership to see how we can look towards the next winter and the following winter, because some of these prices that we've said in terms, are starting to increase for delivery for next winter. So these prices are, the increases are here to stay, but we need to look at what we can be done. So we're not jumping from winter to winter, from crisis to crisis. What can we do more to help consumers and businesses so they can weather the storms? In terms of where we are, are we unique? No, we're definitely not unique. I was on a call with European regulators last week to see what was occurring and how different regulators and governments are dealing with the problem across Europe. Unfortunately, as the regulators were saying, this problem has got beyond the realms of what regulation was set up for initially. So it does need government intervention. Now, whether that's from the UK government in terms of looking at VAT and whether there could be look at the profits that North Sea producers or other companies are making within this, and whether those profits could be played back into helping people and businesses who are struggling. That's an issue for Treasury and the UK government to look at. But similar problems have been experienced across Europe. In terms of energy bill, just for a comparison, in Belgium, the average gas bill for a household that isn't on any support schemes, their average gas bill is 2,600 euros, and the average electricity bill is 1,400 euros. So it's not to reduce the problems that we have here in Northern Ireland, but it's just to try and highlight that those problems aren't unique here to Northern Ireland. But Kevin, I don't know if you want to, if I've missed what I've missed.
I'll just fill in around a lot of the good things you've already said. And I think maybe to structure the conversation, it's good to start at the European level and then bring it down into the Northern Ireland level. Some of the questions were about Europe and their form of regulation, etc. So just to be clear, Northern Ireland gas prices for Northern Ireland households and their electricity prices have been at or below EU levels for the last 5, 6, 7 years. We're not an outlier. In fact, if anything, we're below European average in terms of household prices. I'm only really clarifying that for context, that there's nothing intrinsically wrong with the Northern Ireland model. We have prices that compare well. The current phenomenon of worldwide rising energy prices is, of course, being felt by every country in Europe, as we've discussed, by every supplier in Europe. Doesn't really matter what form of regulation you apply to that, because the underlying wholesale price has just rocketed and gone through the roof, and all suppliers and all companies are feeling that. It's not really an issue about whether we have effective competition or not. It wouldn't have mattered. Every supplier would have felt those rising wholesale prices and had to pass them on to their consumers or go bust. And we've seen dozens of energy suppliers in Great Britain go bust because they haven't been able to pass those costs on to their customers because of the form of the price cap they have over there. So that's just context setting about Europe and about where the Northern Ireland sits within that. In terms of the question of competition versus regulation, we're very lucky in Northern Ireland. We have a beautiful mix of both. So we have regulated prices for the largest suppliers, and then also we have competition to allow other suppliers to come in and compete with those regulated prices. And we see that particularly in electricity, where there's 4 or 5 electricity companies now competing with Power and I. Less so in gas, because the market's much smaller, and in fact, Firmus are a supply, what we call a supply monopoly in the 10 towns area they serve. but they are 100% regulated, and regulated is a surrogate for competition. I suppose our job is to make sure that the prices they charge consumers are fair, efficient, and appropriate. And they are, and we do that diligently every year. And that's one thing that regulation brings to the table, a very clear, transparent assessment that the prices are indeed the lowest they can be. As John said, that means, unfortunately, we can be very clear about the wholesale costs that farmers are facing and about the resulting pressures they are facing to pass through to consumers. We have no choice but to allow them to pass those wholesale costs through to consumers. If they didn't, they'd go bust. It's that simple. And we don't have the powers to stop them passing those prices through. In terms of where we are going forward in the Northern Ireland landscape on energy prices, John showed that this isn't a blip. This is now, these high prices are now locked in for at least the next 12 months, possibly longer. We've been telling everybody that loudly and clearly for the last few months to try and make that clear for policymakers. This winter we're in, the Hardship Fund, the DFEC-led Hardship Fund, and then the 55 million fund now being rolled out are very, very welcome, albeit that I take the points that albeit that some consumers aren't within the basket of that, and that it's happening a month or two later than we all would have wanted it to happen. Nevertheless, a 55 million injection into the poorest set of households in Northern Ireland is very welcome, obviously. What troubles me is that, as we've said, these prices are going to continue. What's going to happen next winter? Is the executive going to have to come up with another 55 million? They won't be able to do that winter after winter. We need a more structured, thought through, longer term affordability, energy affordability strategy for Northern Ireland that is thought through, structured, delivered, and in place in time for next winter. On that note, and picking up some of the points about what can the regulator do, what's the regulator doing with DFC, etc. Those conversations are very live, and the new energy strategy released by the Department for the Economy and its action plan last week, just or the week before, was clear that there needs to be much more joined up work on energy affordability between DFC, DFE, and the other stakeholders in Northern Ireland. What I want to see happening is that by the time we get to next winter, we're not, looking at next winter from the point of view of, oh my goodness, we didn't know this was coming. If these high prices are locked in and are going to stay for next winter, we need to be looking at having the more answers in place by next winter. And to me, to be honest, the medium-term answer for the poor households isn't an ongoing crisis funding every winter. It's some sort of structured, reliable, predictable intervention, both in terms of financial assistance on energy affordability, but also in terms of energy efficiency, that pulls them up out of fuel poverty once and for all. And that's what I think we should all be working on together between the regulator, the companies, DFE and DFC. And that's where we'll be putting our shoulder to the wheel to push that work forward in 2022. So look, I'll stop there. I didn't pick up all the points, but I was really just trying to fill in some of the gaps around what the points John had already made. But look, we'll stop there and maybe go back to members and pick up anything else they want us to address.
Yep, appreciate that, Kevin. Thanks for that. Thanks, John, for the replies as well. Folks, we've had a few additional councillors joining the meeting, so we can record Chief Executive, please the attendance of Councillor McHugh, Councillor Duffy, and Alderman McCready. Alderman McCready's indicated he'd like to ask a question, so I'll bring you in now, Ryan. Go ahead.
Thanks very much, Chair. Conscious I was late, so I just request the presentation to be sent through to my council email address, please. But just with this motion, which is in front of me, I have no problem supporting it. I think we are in a real dire situation, even with the conversations and the answers that I've heard whilst it came on, is evidence to that. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to get any better. Specifically with the case in Ukraine and Russia, a lot of those gas pipelines feed directly into Central Europe and will no doubt spill over to us in terms of if anything does go wrong. And with what's on the table and being offered by the relevant departments in Stormont is welcome, but it's only a sticking plaster. And I just don't know how we as a society, and especially the ones I've been dealing with locally, as many councillors and MLAs have, I just don't know how we can sustain it the way the prices are and the way they're likely to go. Thanks very much for letting me comment on this, Chair.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Ryan. Folks, I don't have any other indicated speakers, so I'm going to just go back to John and Kevin to see if there's any points that they want to add now before we bring this to a close.
No, just thank you very much. Sorry, go on, Kevin.
Sorry, I was just going, there was one thing we didn't address on my notes, which was what happens if a supplier goes bust. I think that question was specifically asked and we didn't address it. Very briefly, 30 seconds. We have a regime in place in Northern Ireland that protects consumers in that scenario, and they will transfer to other suppliers in an ordered way, organised by the regulator and the industry. And it happened 4 years ago when a small electric company called Open Electric went bust, and some councillors might remember that 4 years ago. And it may happen this spring, who knows? But suffice to say, we have protection measures in place. Sorry, John.
Sorry, Chair. I was just going to say thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak today, and we're happy to come and speak at any point if things develop or you want any briefing about anything to do with our work.
Yep, no, appreciate that. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming along on what I'm sure is a very busy day for you both. So thank you for that, and I appreciate it. You're very welcome to log on to YouTube and watch the rest of our council meeting online if you so wish. But if you're tied up with other things today, that's fine, and you can just log out of the WebEx portal now when you're ready. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank
to
you.
the elected members then on the call, there is the proposal from Councillor Farrell, which has been seconded by Councillor Mooney on the screen. I see in the chat box that Councillor Doyle has a suggested amendment. Councillor Doyle, do you want to speak to your amendment, please, and then I'll call for a seconder for it?
Thank you, Chair. No issue at all with the original wording. The only thing I would say is that I think we've all probably come up against the problem of capacity, i.e. there are only so many applications that are processed by Bryson Charitable Group every day, and it is causing a bit of a backlog. So that was my only thought in terms of adding capacity. I think that would add to the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Doyle. Yeah, I need a seconder for that. I see just for the amendment, I'll take Councillor Farrell as indicated to speak. Go ahead, Rory.
Thanks, Chair. Just in terms of clarity, this motion is nothing to do with the scheme that's being administered by Bryson. The Bryson one was the 2 million fund that was aimed at 20,000 households across the north. The scheme that I'm talking about and referring to in this motion is the DFC one that is just aimed at people on pension credit, income support, JSA, ESA and universal credit. We feel that could be expanded to include households in receipt of work and tax credits. So DFC should have the capacity, and this isn't in relation to the Bryson scheme. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Doyle, are you content with that explanation, or do you want to persist with the amendment?
No, content to withdraw, Chair. Thanks.
All right, thank you for that, Councillor Doyle. Folks, the proposed wording of Councillor Farrell has been on the screen now for some time. I haven't seen anybody indicate to speak now in relation to it. So unless somebody does want to speak to it, I'm going to take that proposal on the screen as approved unanimously. So I'll just give it a moment in the chat box for anyone to indicate they wish to speak on it. And I'm not seeing anybody wanting to come in, so I'm going to take that as proposed, as passed unanimously. So thanks for that, Councillor Farrell. Members, that brings that particular item to a close. I'm going to move on now to item number 6, which is Chairperson's business. It's just a few items of Chairperson's business. First of all, given that it's the 1st of February, we want to wish everybody a very happy Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year. It's the year of the tiger. So to any and all of our citizens across the council district that is celebrating Lunar New Year, just to mark that and to wish them well, and to enjoy the day. Also for people of the Celtic tradition, it's a very important day, is St. Bridget's Day, for all of those school children and others that are making St. Bridget's crosses around the council area, just marking the first day of spring and new beginnings. It's an important date as we look forward to hopefully coming out of the pandemic and new beginnings. In sad news, just want to record condolences. I'm sure most people have heard today about the sad passing of Anita Robinson, who was a very witty and committed educationalist in this council area, and indeed a very talented broadcaster and writer, and someone that I'm sure will be deeply missed by wider civic society, not only her own immediate family. So just wanted to record condolences to Anita Robinson's family at this sad time, and also to the family of Gerard Finnegan. Gerard would have been well known across the council area as well in his capacity as the governing body chair of the Northwest Regional College, and he also had a very strong sporting interest, being a former chairman of Namaya Hurling and Camogie Club. So again, just want to record condolences to Gerard Finnegan's family on his passing as well. And finally, members, just to wish Stagetown Brian Oaks all the best for the All-Ireland Intermediate Football Club Championship on Sunday. It's great to see a Derry club in the All-Ireland final playing at Croke Park. It'll be a great occasion for all connected with the club in Stagetown. So to wish them all a very safe trip to Dublin and hopefully come back with some silverware at the weekend. Members, moving on to item number 7, which is the matters arising from the opening minutes of the Governance and Strategic Planning Committee held on Tuesday the 4th of January, pages 19 to 32. So I'm going to take those for accuracy first, please, if I can have a proposer.
I propose it. Seconded by Alderman Devaney.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Devaney and Alderman Breslin. Any matters arising that people have? I'm not seeing anybody wishing to come in on matters arising, so I'm going to take those as approved, members. Thank you. And that moves us on to item number 8, which is the All-Ireland Strategic Rail Review. So I'm going to hand over to officers for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members, the purpose of this report is to seek members' comments and approval of the draft consultation response that has been drawn up in relation to the All-Ireland Strategic Rail Review. The review, as members know, was launched on the 29th of November last year, jointly by the NI Minister for Infrastructure and the ROI Minister for Transport. The purpose of the review, which is important, was set out with the following ambitions: improving connectivity between the major cities on the island, including the potential for higher or high-speed rail, enhancing regional accessibility, supporting balanced regional development, and considering rail connectivity to gateways such as sea and airports, and also including the role of freight. As members also know, the consultants, ARP, were appointed to work with the departments through a steering group to lead on the development of the consultation document and to lead on the engagement with stakeholders. The review is set out in 3 phases. Phases 1, which is a review of the current policy landscape. Phase 2, which is identification of different service and connectivity concepts, and phase 3, which is the final appraisal of the developed concepts. So we're currently in phase 1. The consultation document set out 6 goals. I'll not repeat them. They're there for you in section 3.4. And as members know, this council established a working group comprising any elected member who wished to be part of it. It was convened on the 2nd of December last year. We had our initial meeting, and we further met on the 13th of January to consider the review, and ARPs were invited to that meeting to outline the consultation. A draft consultation response had also been prepared for that meeting, so members of the working group had access to the draft document at that stage. Further to that, ARUPS also presented into the joint Northwest Development Group meeting on the 21st of January to councillors for both Derry City and Strabane District Council and councillors from Donegal County Council. The draft response has since been amended following comments from elected members, either at our own meeting on the 13th of January, or if there were further points made on the 21st of January. And the draft response was submitted by the closing deadline as required, but with a note advising that if it hadn't been through the governance structures of Derry City and Strabane District Council, was to come to today's governance committee, and should there be further amendment required, those would be sent through, and that has been accepted by the team. A copy of the consultation is set out, members, in the appendices, and also the draft consultation response. So I'm not going to read through that. You'd be glad to hear, but I did think it's important to point out a number of the key issues in terms of how we suggest we respond. So we've set out the introduction and context. It's very important to understand that the consultation sets out 5 questions. So they do require a structured response. And we've given considerable thought to that structured response. And obviously that, as I say, has already received the endorsement of the Rail Working Group. So question 1 asks if the policy priorities are adequately set out. We would suggest that they are, and we've cited what those are. But we do think that it is very important that the policy priorities are expanded to include everything that is captured in relation to rail commitments to the Northwest through the National Development Plan, through the Regional Spatial Strategy, through the Northern Ireland Regional Development Strategy, and the various other strategy documents that are there. So our Strategic Business Manager, Rachel Craig, has trawled through all of those documents and has captured their commitments to the Northwest and has presented those in section 1.3, etc. of that first question. So that's the main thrust of our response under question 1. Question 2, what's the desired role of rail in our area of interest? And we're limited in terms of the number of words that we can provide in relation to that. And essentially the argument put forward is to realise the full potential of the region, is to ensure that the transformational underinvestment proposals, or the transformational proposals that are currently being brought forward to address historic underinvestment in this region, can only be effectively and efficiently delivered if we have improved connectivity to the other cities on the island, and that improved connectivity should be in sustainable connectivity, and obviously that rail plays a large part in that. That's the broad thrust of the response to question 2. Question 3, what are the key gaps in rail provision in our area? Not a difficult question for us in the Northwest to answer, and you'll see that we've set that out very succinctly. Question 4, the importance of the objectives set out in the document. We have articulated that we consider that the goal 5 outlined to foster balanced regional and sustainable economic activity should be the primary goal, but feeding into the overarching objective of contributing to decarbonisation and climate resilience. And finally, members, getting to the crux of the issue, what are the specific investment options that this council expects to be considered? Again, we have been as succinct as possible in this to avoid confusion and to be very clear on the strategic ask of this council of the wider Northwest, which is to build on what exists at the moment in terms of the line to Belfast, increased speed and increased frequency. There are many debates around how that may or may not be achievable. That's not for now, we would propose, but the concept of requiring it to be faster and increased speed is the key objective. A direct connection from the city to Dublin via Strabane and Omagh. Again, the routing of that is something that will be taken forward through phase 2 if it's accepted as a policy imperative for the Northwest. A connection from the city to Letterkenny and onwards to Sligo to connect with the Galway and Atlantic corridor that is being delivered from the south upwards. Obviously, if those connections are provided, there then is the opportunity to provide a suburban rail service for the city region. And we would argue that that would encompass Letterkenny, Strabane, and obviously with halts at appropriate places. And we cite the potential of a halt at Eglinton or City of Derry Airport. Obviously, any connections and new connections should have freight in mind, connections to from the city and the port to other ports and cities on the island. As other improvements are being made elsewhere, we also cite the importance of connections to the 2 key major airports on the island. And we conclude our consultation response by saying that as a conclusion to this review, this council anticipates a commitment to the funding and implementation of feasibility studies into all of the various suggestions that we made. And the key important point, members, is that not based on existing evidence of need, but based on the potential for this city and this region and the wider Northwest, and the potential of this place to provide for the remainder of the island. And that's a very key point that we've drawn out on a number of occasions in the document. So, Chair, that's a sort of a quick run through, but I'm aware of the fact that through the Rail Working Group and the Northwest Group, we did spend some very considerable time mulling over this, and simply wanted to summarise it, mostly for the benefit of members who maybe weren't able to make those meetings. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. No, appreciate that, John. Thank you very much for the presentation today, and also to Rachel and yourself and all the council officer team for the work that's been put into the Rail Working Group, getting that initiated, getting the documents prepared and organised, and then getting the consultants to hear from us, as well as then coordinating that work with Donegal County Council also, because that's key to the wider Northwest improvements. So I think it is that once in a lifetime opportunity to try and shape the future of our island, and delighted that all of that work has been completed so far. Gonna open it up to the floor for commentary. A number of indicated speakers, so we'll take them in the order that are there. So Councillor Farrell first, and then Councillor Heaney. Go ahead, Rory.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, John, for the report. We've spent a lot of time on this, and I am hopeful that it reaps dividends and benefits for people right across this city and district. And, you know, this all-island strategic rail review represents a massive opportunity for citizens here in the Northwest. It's an opportunity to develop a greener public transport system, and it's an opportunity to enhance connectivity between Derry and the other cities across this island. And it's an all-island approach, and it's a common sense approach. And it must be remembered that Derry is the 4th largest city on this island. We have an airport next to a rail line. We have a port next to a rail line, neither of which are connected to that actual rail line. So we have the economic assets, and we need to make sure that they're connected to the all-island rail network. And our consultation response, we are making a clear, comprehensive and concise argument for investment in the Northwest. We are making the argument for faster and more frequent connections to cities right across this island. We are making the argument for a direct connection to Dublin via Strabane and Omagh. And finally, we're making the argument for a connection along the Atlantic coast via Letterkenny, Sligo, Galway, and beyond. So I would like to thank the officer team behind this who have spent time and effort devising this consultation response. And I welcome the engagement with the consultancy team at ARUP I think was a very useful exercise. So I am happy to propose this on behalf of the SDLP. We fully support and endorse this consultation response. So thank you, and thanks to everybody involved.
Okay, thanks to that, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Heaney, go ahead, Connor.
Thanks, Chair, and I'm happy to second the proposal on that basis. I thought where I was going to propose it. So, like, our party fully supports what's in this, and again, I also thank the officers that put the work into this response. It's long overdue, and I just hope this all-item review isn't simply an exercise in consultation, and that something actually comes out of this at the far end, and that probably will require political change right across this island. And for that, in the time ahead, and it's obviously not helped by the ongoing threats to pull down the executive by the DUP. But that is what it is. So again, I'm happy to endorse the paper, and also just our own party has also submitted a response to this consultation, and I assume other parties also, and many of the elements that are contained in this are also mirrored in our own response. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Heaney. Next indicated speaker, Councillor Doyle. Go ahead, Emmett.
Thanks, Chair. Just to be associated with your comments under Chair's business as well. Absolutely endorse the draft response from Council, and thanks to the officers for putting it together. What I would say is, and maybe John might be able to answer this, or Rachel, in terms of the connectivity to City of Derry Airport, if one was to look just at the topography of the site out there, the rail connection at the moment, or the rail line, sorry, goes right across the outer periphery of the airport in terms of right beyond the runways. Has there been any thought, or have we engaged in any kind of mapping of, if there was to be a rail stop at the site, how that might look or where that might be situated? Because I think that would be helpful in seeking to attract funding going forward. I'll be really interested to hear a response to that, Chair. Thank you.
Chair, do you want me to come in at that point?
Yeah, if you want, John, take it now. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, very good point, Councillor Doyle. There have been various looks at this over the years. I'm not aware of any serious attempt to draw it up in a strategy document, but certainly there have been cursory looks at it. It's very achievable in terms of how it could be done. There is land within the airport ownership that it could be built on, and there's certainly other land available which could make it entirely achievable, both as a halt for the airport and the wider sort of Eglinton area. As members have pointed out, if you've pointed out, the railway line runs right by one end of the runway, and it's not very far at all from there to the terminal building, and it's connected by a roadway down to that particular site. So it's certainly not an insurmountable task, and there are no major engineering difficulties associated with it that spring to mind.
Okay, thanks for that, John. Alderman McCready, go ahead, Ryan.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to convey my support and endorsement from the Ulster Unionist Party to put forward this draft consultation response. Very useful conversation I think we had with council officers and the ARUP team, just in terms of those headline objectives and what they really mean for us as a city, and indeed how that would transform to a realistic connectivity throughout the entire island. But more locally, I look forward to that update on how we're getting there, and for us as a real northwest hub, linking in with the airport, you've got a seaport there. Hopefully we'll have a fully furnished university campus and so on. But expectation management with all of these large-scale infrastructure projects could be decades before there's realistically passengers on these new, more frequent or faster network within the rail. So I just want to give the full support, and thanks to Rachel in particular, the council officer who was really at the helm on this one. and yeah, it's long overdue. So full support, and thanks for allowing me to comment on this, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor or Alderman McCready. Councillor Edwards, next speaker. Go ahead, Stephen.
Chair, thanks for letting me in, as I'm not a member of the committee, but I do echo my colleagues' words, Councillor Farrell earlier, and I want to thank the officers for bringing this report. And it's no surprise, Chair, that my interest is in rail expansion, and I brought a motion to Council last year calling for Council to support extend the railway to Strabane and further afield, and it was unanimously accepted, which I was very grateful for. But Chair, in January this year, a few weeks ago, I met with the Campaign for Border Rail Scotland. I met with their chairperson, treasurer, and a few of their officers, and they reopened 35 miles of rural railway in Scotland from Edinburgh, the Tweed Bank. They successfully lobbied for it. And the key takeaway that they gave me was not to solely focus on the infrastructure deficit alone, like we have in the Northwest, but they also look at and stress the socio-economic and environmental benefits of rail. And I think in this response, officers have done that, which I'm very thankful of. And I hope that this consultation on oil and rail will pave the way for future rail expansion in the Northwest and the west of this island. I think its outcome could lay a very solid foundation for all stakeholders to build on, hopefully the near future, including this council, and hopefully this is only the start of that journey. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Harkin, Sean, you're next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me in, and thanks to council officers for putting this together. It draws in a lot of the demands that people have campaigned on for many years, and the consultation is as a result of those campaigners that have sometimes campaigned when they've been in the wilderness, and now we're in a situation where two governments that were virtually completely disinterested in rail, the Dáil government and the Stormont government, have been forced to put it high up on their agenda. And I suppose the issue is now, I have no doubt that the outcome of this consultation will be a demand right across the island for extended and expanded rail services, and that will be very sharply put by people here in Derry and our council area and right across the Northwest, where we have the biggest gap of any place on the island. The problem now is going to be the urgency that this gets acted on, because I don't think anybody can trust the Dáil government, or certainly not the Stormont executive government, to move quickly, and that's going to be our next problem. So I think look at all the great plans we've come up with for this place over many years, but both have been neglected. The Northwest has been neglected by both governments. So we need a radical change in how those governments approach the entirety of the Northwest. And I think it's going to take more people power. I don't think this document by itself, no matter how good it is going to force two governments that haven't cared about the Northwest for over 100 years, for the last 20 years, to act. So I think we as a council and others who have campaigned on this issue are going to have to increase the pressure now for delivery in this, so that it doesn't sit on a shelf gathering dust. And that's going to require more people power action to make sure that we see delivery in this, not in 20, 50 years time, but there should be tracks going down immediately. And that's what we desperately need. We need urgent, radical action. That's what the climate emergency called for, and that's what this is about. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Harkin. Alderman Devaney, go ahead, Morris.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And Chair, on behalf of the DEP, we have no problem in supporting the recommendation going forward here. Anything that promotes rail across Northern Ireland and further afield is very welcome. And it's good to hear connections between maybe Oma and Strabane, which would be very welcome for myself as a rural councillor for that area. And Chair, I think it's important that we do look at the rail infrastructure. And I do agree we have an airport and a foil port here, and there's no stops for a rail link, and I think it's important that we investigate that and have a look at it. I heard our chief executive talking about it there, and I think it's a it's a very positive story to hear that we're discussing it here now, and look forward to seeing it going forward in that shape. But as I say, if we had a very, very good rail link across Northern Ireland here, when we look at the carbon footprint of cars and the amount of vehicles on the road, if we had a good link, a good rail link, it would probably help take numbers off the roads where people were more encouraged to travel by rail. But a lot of work to do, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's probably going to take quite a number of years, even probably 5 years to 10 years to get delivery on something like this here, because lots of money involved in it, and that money it has to be identified where that funding would come from. But Chair, very, very supportive of the recommendation. And I just want to go back on a comment that Councillor Heaney had mentioned about collapse and stormont. When I look at Sinn Féin, they have a history of collapse and stormont, and they know what it's about. But thanks, Chair.
Okay, members, I'm conscious that Councillor Doyle already has spoken. I see the proposal that he's put in the chat box, but Alderman Hussey has indicated he wants to speak as well. So I'm going to bring in Alderman Hussey before we go back to Councillor Doyle on the proposal that he's put in the chat box. Go ahead, Derek.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of the committee, so I appreciate the opportunity. I haven't said on the rail, our own rail review, and indeed through the presentation to the Northwest. And I think, as John has already outlined, our proposals, we're working in tandem with others involved in the entire process. And I suppose that expression that you would hear on the London Underground, mind the gap, is what we're about here. It's getting that gap filled. I think the strategic rail review concentrates on the major routes. And although it talks about cities, if you look into the actual review, you'll find it talks about cities and major towns. And I think it's important that we remember the major towns, and we do in the submission through our own area, Strabane, and indeed going through to our neighbouring council area, Omagh. I would imagine that Fermanagh Omagh will be making the point for the restoration of the Omagh and Enniskillen link. I was brought up in Omagh, and Omagh was like Strabane, a rail town. It was a hub, and we're really looking at a re-establishment of what was there before. And that route through to Dublin, I well remembered, through Dungannon on to Portadown and on down to Dublin. That route was there, and that major route needs to be restored. And then, of course, the connections through to Fermanagh and indeed Donegal, that whole system to be reinstated. I don't think we're going to see, Councillor Harkins referred there to the lines, start laying the lines now. I don't think we're going to reach that position, perhaps not even in my lifetime, given the stage of my life that I'm at. But one thing that needs to begin fairly quickly is route protection, identification of, and then route protection for the eventual laying down of the track to enable the system to get up and going again. And I suppose John has said there, we concentrate on the major, but we then consider an internal, I forget how you described it, John, but a localized system within that. And as it was a bit like build it and they'll come. If we can have the major routes, we can then add the bits and pieces to a city regional system. I know that worked on the continent. 2 decades ago, I was on study tours there with the Assembly Regional Development Committee, and what was happening was they built lines out, basically tram lines, and development followed along those lines, both domestic development and indeed industrial development. So all of those issues need to be taken on board. So as I say, route protection at this moment in time, for me, is something that has to be looked at seriously. And I note Councillor Doyle's proposal and totally support it, but perhaps he couldn't go include, it talks about a rail stop at City of Derry. Perhaps in the proposal, the port needs to be considered as well for a rail stop, particularly if we're seeking to develop a proper freight system, bringing freight off the roads and into the northwest via the railroads. Thank you for the opportunity, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Alderman Hussey. If you can also just lower your hand on this on the electronic screen as well, please. Okay, Councillor Farrell on Councillor Doyle's proposal. Go ahead, Rory.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I support the spirit of Councillor Doyle's proposal. You know, we know it makes sense to have a rail halt at our airport, and equally it would make sense to have a rail halt at the port, which is basically next door to it. But it is my understanding that Nicola Mallon, the Minister for Infrastructure, has commissioned a series of feasibility studies regarding rail connections in the northwest. You know, there's the feasibility study which is underway for phase 3, so the upgrade of the Derry Coleraine line, and Minister Mallon also announced that there is a feasibility study for half-hourly services to Belfast with halts at Eglinton, or at the airport, Strathfoyle and Ballykelly. So it is my understanding that that feasibility study will include what Councillor Doyle is proposing there, and it's further my understanding, after having a meeting with TransLink, that the feasibility study in question is due to be completed around June or July this year. So I'd be keen to avoid duplication. I'd be keen to avoid an unnecessary expense for local ratepayers. So I don't think I can support this motion in its current format, but I would ask the Chief Executive, has there been any engagement with DFI to understand the scope and scale of the feasibility study before we go and spend a bucket load of money doing something that's being done already? Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Farrell. I see Alderman McCready is looking in as well, so I'll bring you in, Alderman McCready, now, and then I'll bring in the Chief Executive. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm inclined to agree with Member Rory Farrell on this one, because when you look at the title and what we're doing as a response for a strategic rail review, it is precisely that, strategic. I don't think it's helpful at this stage, but I do appreciate the sentiment and the focus from Member Doyle. But we've got to look at strategy before we start cherry picking particular stops, because feasibility hasn't been done yet. The consultants haven't been done yet. So let's not get ahead of ourselves, and let's not complicate the current process, which is extant. Let's use the process, and if anything else needs to be included within our existing response to the consultation, and by all means feed it in. But I don't necessarily see this separate standalone proposal supporting that in any way as it stands. So I wouldn't be inclined to support this one. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Alderman McCready. Chief Executive, is there any points of clarification you want to bring in response to Councillor Farrell's question?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, it's my understanding, as has already been articulated, that DFI is currently looking into, well, fairly advanced in terms of the feasibility of the phase 3 works, as they're known as, between Derry and Coleraine. Also, separately but connected, the feasibility of a half-hourly service, and they're also looking at the potential of halts and the location of halts. And in relation to the proposed consultation response, section 5.4 says that we would expect to be considered that the Derry, Londonderry and the Northwest City Region suburban rail service centred on the city, with services to from Letterkenny, Strabane and halts at Eglinton and City of Derry Airport. And section 5.7 of the proposed consultation response calls for implementation of feasibility studies into all of the issues raised in sections 5.1 to 5.6, which includes location and feasibility of halts. Thank you, Chair.
Appreciate that. Alderman Devaney indicated he wants to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the proposal from our party, we understand the sentiments of the proposal, but in light of the information coming forward that there is a piece of work ongoing and a substantial piece of work ongoing, we could not support the proposal at the moment, because when we look at what our Chief Executive has just discussed there, you know, the phase 3 from London to Coleraine has been looked at and worked on, and stops are being worked on, and we believe, Chair, this would be duplication. And look, I think we should sit out and wait to see what the Minister comes back with on this, but you know, supportive of the sentiment, but just can't support the proposal.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that, Alderman Devaney. Councillor Doyle, is there anything you want to add in relation to the commentary around your proposal? I know you spoke earlier, but that was before you popped the proposal into the chat box.
Yeah, Chair, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the thoughts of members. I suppose what I'm trying to get at here is that I know the feasibility studies are ongoing, but eventually, in order to bring about an actual stop at City of Derry, the departments are going to have to come and talk to us, because it's our land. And that I would like to see us ready to be able to go, well, okay, if you're now wanting to have that conversation, we've already considered this. And it comes from the comments there from the Chief Executive, that this has been talked about before, but in terms of, you know, if someone was to come from the department right now to ask us where, for example, we would have a location for a stop, given where the current line is, and it's far to the north of the site, I would like us to be ready for that. But I understand there's not support for it in the room, so I am happy to withdraw it at this point. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thanks for that, Councillor Doyle. And I do think it is something that all those that are in attendance at the real working groups will obviously bear in mind, because as has been clearly outlined this afternoon by a number of speakers, there's certainly strong support for the spirit of what you had on the screen. Members, don't have any other indicated speakers on this item. I'm conscious that back when we started speaking on it, Councillor Farrell proposed it and Councillor Heaney seconded it. So we're happy enough to take that item as agreed and then move on to item number 9, which is the employment of casual workers.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to outline to members how we employ casual workers. It's recommended that members note the report and endorse the approach outlined. Organisations usually employ casual workers or employees on zero-hour contracts or agency workers to provide cover when substantive employees are not available. So, for example, to cover sick leave or to cover annual leave or emergencies. Over the last number of years, Council has significantly reduced its agency usage, and instead we employ registers of casual workers, and we don't employ anyone on zero-hour contracts. At the minute, we have in the region of about 100 casual workers on our lists, and these casual workers are mainly used to provide cover, again, in emergencies or when contracted employees are on leave or on sickness absence. And we used a lot of casual workers during over the last couple of years due to the pandemic. And the majority of these workers are employed across frontline services, mainly leisure and environmental services. And we recruit casual workers on a regular basis. A couple of times a year, we generally go out with an advert, and they're not guaranteed regular or continuous work, and they have the option of accepting or refusing any work that we offer them. And many of those on our casual registers are students or those who are only available and interested in accepting work at certain times. So, for example, we have some who only want to work weekends, some casual workers who only want to work holiday periods or maybe in evenings. Casual lists, okay, so we review our casual lists on a regular basis, and where we identify that workers have accrued service and employment rights, we regularise their employment where possible, and we issue them with a contract of employment. And we do this on an ongoing basis in consultation with our recognised trade unions. There are no implications associated with this report at present, so it's recommended that members note the report and endorse the approach outlined. Thank you.
Okay, Paula, appreciate that. Thank you very much. Councillor Mooney's indicated he wants to speak. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, Chair, I'm just coming in here. Thank you. Just to declare an interest that my daughter is a casual employee in the Foy Arena as a lifeguard. So I just wanted to register that interest. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Sean. Sean Harkin, Councillor Harkin, go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Look, this is, anecdotally, my experience is that there are quite a few casual workers who are definitely not students, and that there's quite a few casual workers who want full-time contracts, and that there's quite a few casual workers who have been working for the council for quite a while and haven't been given full-time contracts. So this doesn't quite match what I've heard directly from council workers who are casuals, and it's certainly not students who are looking for a few hours here and there, or working when they come back during their summer holidays, or only looking to work at the weekend. I mean, I know council workers who are casuals who worked, were involved in leisure, but they worked at the cemetery during the pandemic. They basically worked wherever they were asked to go. I've been in discussions recently about leisure workers, and I know that that the council recently has begun to give people 12-week contracts, which they weren't doing before Christmas. So none of this is reflected in the report. So I'm putting that out there to see if any of this is if council officers or anybody else are familiar with what I am expressing. And I've been in discussions with council, different people as well, who have agreed with me about the need to see casuals be given the opportunity to take advantage of full-time or part-time permanent contracts. So yeah, I don't think that this certainly doesn't reflect the discussions that I've had over a number of years with council workers and with some trade union representatives as well.
Okay, Councillor Harkin, thanks for those comments. I'm sure Paul will want to come back in due course. Alderman Devaney, Morris, go ahead. And then
thank you, Chair, for allowing me in, and look, welcome the recommendation coming forward here. And I suppose, Chair, for me reading this is about the process and how casual workers are recruited. And look, I see nothing outstanding in this. The recommendation is just telling us how they're recruited, and the only question I want, and I'm happy to propose the recommendation. The only question I would for Paula is, do we have any problem in recruiting casual workers in the present climate that we're in? And I do appreciate that casual workers have been probably used more often since the pandemic has come in almost 2 years ago, when we had what we would call full-time staff maybe off, or whatever the case may be. And it's important that we always have that pool of casual workers to pull in or work with in case there are cases where, look, 2 out of a team could be down, and if you can't get casual workers in, that work doesn't proceed. But it's important that we carry on that work, and that's the only question I would have, Paula, is in around the recruiting. Have we names there, and are we content with that? But happy to propose, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Morris. Councillor Gallagher, Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, for letting us in. And like Councillor Harkin, I would have the same concerns that he's outlined. And I sort of brought this to the front of the full council meeting. And when I look at the report, I just see some language in it, that's not very, if you want to call it, it's very loose. And it talks about mainly, and it talks about an emergency, and it talks about some stuff around where possible. And again, it's my understanding that there's been some casual workers within council that has been employed as a casual role for many years. So some of it, again, reading the report, it doesn't reflect on some of the knowledge. But there's some before rushing to endorse this report. You could say to yourself that council has a long experience of being an employer, and we've had many discussions around 0-hour contracts and your definition of what's a 0-hour contract versus casual remains to be teased out, I think, in my mind. But council being a large employer of almost 1,000 people, it can track and it can trace its employees, and it can track and trace, when there's times of the year employees may be off more than normal. And if we were looking about, this emergency stuff around casuals, I think that the best way forward for council to look at options, do the track and trace. No, as in we employ 1,000 people at any given time, there may be an absence of, and we can talk in percentages, they will know. And if it happens to be, just for example, for toxic, we use the number of 50, then across that track and trace, we could employ full-time 50 employees that could move around where the vacancies arise. Because I know, and I've engaged with people who want full-time work, and they're saying the only thing available is around casual. And we take, for example, our leisure. And in Strabane Town, as an example, there's a very high level of youth unemployment, very high level. And ways and means of trying to develop that capacity is around training up people. And they train up to be lifeguards, and then they're getting forced into a casual position rather than a full-time position, and it really sets them back. And during the conversations that we've had around 0 hours, and that it actually plunges people into poverty, and council very much trying to get to the fore of being an implementation of good practice. I think this and around this report, I think it needs teased out far, far more, where we can get into a position where we are driving forward the eradication of casual, of 0-hour contracts, of around keeping people in poverty, keeping people that have no secure future, and around employment. And we can see it. And I don't want to go into like individual people, but following on what Councillor Harkin says, we have a lot of our workplace that are floating about that have got and see themselves as having no future in employment. So we need to address it, and I think it needs to tease out far more. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. Alderman McCready, Ryan.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Paul, for the report. Chair, if this is such an issue and there's either allegations or things which are not or which are unsubstantiated, I'm happy to defer this in order to get to the bottom of it. But so far, not a single shred of evidence has been presented to council officers to back up some of these claims. I'd be more than happy to wait and hear from them, because our employees, whether they're full-time, permanent, semi-permanent, or casuals, are equally as important. But I can only go off what I'm presented with, Chair, from council officers. And in terms of the approach, largely I don't see a huge issue with the approach, because let's look at the reality of such a large organisation. You're talking around 1,000 employees, 1 in every 10 are casual. To pick up the demand or the deficit from those that can't make it to work, or all the issues that we have in life. So I don't believe that you can really eradicate the needs for the casual contracts that we have in a way, because that means then if you give everyone who's on casual employment now or different types of contracted hours and make them full time, there's a quantum which comes with that. And if that's the case, then when we talk about rates, then highlight that and raise it and find where that money's coming from, because the same people that will speak about this will not agree with accepting or striking the rates in order to pay for our existing employees and their pay rises, which are statutory, and so on. So I don't think it's a clean-cut argument here from what I'm hearing on the floor, Chair. But I'm not hell-bent on trying to push this through just for the sake of it. And Chair, if it does need to be deferred, I'm certainly open to that in order for council officers to listen and hear the claims from other members and substantiate some of the evidence so we can all make an informed decision. But I'm not prepared to sit here and use things which haven't been substantiated to try and sway members' decisions. So I'm open for this. I know there's a proposal, or Member Morris is looking to move on this, but maybe if we all consider what is the impact of us not making a decision on this at the moment, because all it's asking is for us to note the contents and endorse the approach which has been taken, because a lot of work has went into the approach to look at the numbers. And personally speaking, I've been there and I still use 0 hours contract myself, because that's the stage in my life. And there's many people that I speak with on a daily basis which may not fit full-time employment. They like the flexibility, and as what Paula says, those on that contract can turn around and say, do you know what? No, because it needs to be mutually agreeable in order to fulfill that contract. So I don't see it as a squeeze on people en masse. I think it very much is an open contract there, and whether you agree with it is between the employee and the employer. And I'm certainly happy with the assurance and governance and how we have those contracts and look after our people. So I don't see any red flags here at the moment from what I've read, Chair, but I am open to defer or go ahead with the vote. I'm open to it. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Fleming, Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Martin, and thanks to Paula for the report. And the first thing in terms of Sinn Féin would welcome is the fact that there is no 0-hour contract workers employed by Derry City and Strabane District Council. And as we know, a motion came and was passed at Council in 2018. Would also welcome the further stage of the bill storming brought by MLA Gemma Dolan from Sinn Féin to bring about a bill that bans 0-hour contracts right across the 6 counties for that passing, hopefully. In regards to this, I mean, we would be of a mind as well if there needs to be further work or further clarification in relation to this, because obviously you wouldn't want to be dismissing if people have genuine concerns in relation to this, but I think they be brought forward, and I don't even know in terms of Paula whether or not there's any statistics in regards to what may or may not have happened in the last couple of years. But I also note as well in terms of that, and I misquote or mislead the words, but in done and consult with trade unions on an ongoing basis. So even if there's a bit of clarification on that in regards to has so far the unions been supportive of the approach taken by council in conjunction with them. But certainly if there is people within council who have grievances, then obviously there's processes in place which they can bring their grievances to. But certainly if there was more time to clarify and bring further detail in regard to this, then we would be of a mind to support that.
Okay, thank you for that, Paul. Alderman Breslin, Alan.
It's okay, Chairman.
Okay, thanks for that, Alan. Councillor Harkin again, go ahead.
Yeah, look, thank you, Chair. It was just in response to Alderman McCready. He may utilise 0-hour contracts himself and think they're a good thing, but the trade union movement and this council are opposed to them, and that is our corporate position. So, you know, I don't think it's great that he would be advocating for them for the council at this point. And then, yeah, look, I can't make a proposal to this committee because I'm not on it, but my recommendation to committee members would be to defer this and see if there can be. I don't want to call these things allegations because that's not the way I'm thinking about it. It's about trying to make sure that our council is, to the best of its ability, being a model around workers' rights and social justice. And what I'm saying is this is anecdotally what I'm picking up, and when I talk to council workers who are in the casual category, but work 40 hours every week and have been doing so for many years, and who would want, as far as I can tell, to be full-time workers. And that doesn't seem to be reflected in the report. Thank you.
Okay, back to Alderman Devaney. Morris.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me back in. And in light of the conversation, Chair, I'm happy to withdraw the proposal. And look, if it hasn't been proposed, I would propose that we defer. If it hasn't been proposed, I'm happy to defer the item to come back again, and look at the relevant information and questions that have been asked by members here this evening at this meeting. Okay, Chair, thanks.
Okay, thanks for that, Alderman Devaney.
Chair, I'm happy to second that if you're going to take it.
Okay, I'll just, before I take that proposal, I'm going to bring back in Paula, because I did indicate after, I think, the first or second speaker that Paula might want to bring some clarification to the points that had already been raised. So, Paula, is there anything you've heard there now after you spoke initially that you want to provide additional clarity on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I suppose I just want to provide assurance that we do review our casual workers on a regular basis, and it is done in consultation with the trade unions. We do, however, we have times when people query their status, and we're actually dealing with a couple of formal cases at the minute that are going through a formal process where we're, looking at their records, looking at their employment. And again, I assure you, I want to provide assurance where we identify any case, for example, where someone has worked 40 hours per week and it's continuous, we will recognise that as employment status and deal with it appropriately. So, our workers and our employees are aware of the internal processes that we have, and we openly review anyone that comes forward that if someone feels that they've been missed, and we look, we go through in great detail their status. And so, if there's anyone out there, I'm not aware of, the details. As I say, we're dealing with 2 cases at the minute that we're taking through a formal process, but the processes are there for employees or workers to come forward for us to query their status. And in fact, our recognised trade unions would acknowledge, particularly over the last 12 to 24 months, that we're an example of good practice in how we've treated our casual workers, because we have issued them with contracts of employment if they've built up service. Just another point in terms of permanent jobs, where we recruit most of our casual workers in leisure and in environment, and over the last 2 years we have had permanent jobs that we're out there publicly advertising, trying to get people into those posts. So those casual workers that maybe haven't reached the level of service to be deemed permanent have had, do get the opportunity to apply for jobs. And at the minute, as we're all aware, these posts have been advertised quite regularly. So again, as I say, all I can do is provide the assurance that we are reviewing them on a regular basis, and if employees come forward or workers come forward and querying their service, we will review that. And and again, there was a reference to employees being offered 12-week contracts. I'm not aware of that, but again, if any member wants to bring me further details, I'll look into it further. But at the minute, we haven't offered anyone 12-week contracts. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Paula. I know that Alderman Devaney and then Alderman McCready have made a proposal and then seconded this to defer this. Councillor Boyle, as indicated, wants to come in. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Chair. And just again, very briefly, obviously I've heard what everybody has contributed here. I think, different members have said different things in relation to these forms of contracts, and I understand the paper, I understand exactly where Paul is coming from. Look, the SDLP aren't going to die in a ditch over whether we have a deferral about this, but at the same time, I do appreciate and understand that we want to push forward if this is the appropriate way to go forward. And I think we all appreciate and also understand, there are mechanisms for employees to approach council, whether it be through unions, line managers, whether they be casual or otherwise. And I always get a little bit uncomfortable when I hear elected representatives perhaps being involved in part of that process when there already are agreements as to how concerns are brought forward by employees. And those agreements, to the best of my knowledge and in my experience, do not include interference, for want of a better way of putting it, by elected representatives. I think that's an unhealthy direction for elected representatives to go. However, what I would say, Chair, is that if people are wanting to defer this, then I would suggest that any elected representatives who do have particular concerns in this matter, bring them forward to Paula in the first instance, so as that she and her officer team can understand without us going round in circles with it this afternoon, Chair. So content enough to defer it for that, but I would also add the caveat, that those conversations could take place before we get this to a full council, so that we can actually then bring this to a conclusion at full council if that's deemed at all possible.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Boyle. Councillor Harkin, you're looking in again. Yeah, so if you go ahead.
Well, yeah, look, I feel like I need to respond to what Councillor Boyle is saying there, because that just strikes me as utter waffle. I don't know what he's talking about, not taking up issues that people bring to you and concerns. I don't know, maybe he's too, I don't know if he sits with employers too often, but this just seems to be a reoccurring theme where we bring up issues of workers' rights, and it's like, I'm not sure about this or I'm not sure about that. I'm going to represent people who bring me issues, and that's what I was elected for. And if they're in Foyleside or anywhere else, and I'm telling you right now, this is an issue. And if you don't want to, you should go and actually talk to some casual workers, because you don't appear to be talking to any right now, if this is your attitude. So there's been words used about allegations. Now it's like councillors shouldn't be getting involved in these discussions. Councillors are involved in these discussions because workers actually come to us and talk to us about some of these frustrations. And I've had trade union reps come to talk to me about these issues as well. So, what we're fighting for is what we've said before. Our council should be a model employer. Our corporate position is to support workers' rights and to support social justice. I'm not neutral in this. I know you want to try and be on both sides, represent billionaires and represent workers. That doesn't work. It's not working right now for workers who are getting hammered by these bills, energy bills, inflation, while we see the super wealthy and elites doing very, very well. So this is part of that. Our council needs to advocate as aggressively as it can for workers' rights and do its best to give people contracts, whether it's 10 hours a week, whether it's 15 hours a week, that are permanent, that actually reflect the fact that they are working week in and week out for the council. And this is something that we've been having discussions with different workers, for a while. So, I feel like that needed to be said. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, we're straying beyond where we're at with this particular item into talking about wider employment issues. This is a paper that was requested for and brought back to this committee for the council's current position, which Paula has outlined, of employment of casual workers, and people have indicated that they wanted to defer that from being approved today for the discussion with Paula. So I'm going to try and bring this to a close. I see there's another indicated speaker, which is Councillor Boyle. So go ahead, Councillor Boyle, and then we need to move on. John.
Chair, I'm just exercising a right of reply to Councillor Harkin. I certainly was not advocating anything other than standing up for workers and workers' rights. And I don't see too many, to quote in inverted commas Councillor Harkin, I don't see too many billionaires employed by Derry City and Strabane District Council, nor sitting in the elected body either of Derry City and Strabane District Council. That's the paper that we're discussing here in front of us. And as the chair of the committee has already said, the wider workers' rights debate is not for this particular paper. But I feel that it's only right that I respond to that. And as I said, in my experience of being on council, it can be a very unhealthy way of communicating between workers and senior officers on council if elected representatives get themselves mixed up in the middle of that. That's what the unions are there to do, as much as any elected representative is there to do. And I trust the unions in doing their job, those unions who represent the workers in Derry City and Strabane District Council. So that's what I was saying, just so you understand that. Thank you.
Okay, folks. This has been a proposal to defer this item by Alderman Devaney and then seconded by Alderman McCready. So are members content to follow that direction, and that we defer this, and if individual councillors have concerns or concerns have been brought to them, then they take that up with Paula and refer them in that direction. Are members content with that approach? Not seeing anyone indicating they wish to come in to disagree on that point. So with that, members, we draw item 9 to a close and then move on to item 10. Members, it's just gone 6 o'clock, so we've been on now for 2 hours. So as traditional with our WebEx virtual meetings, we take a break after this 2-hour point and then recommence at item 10. So it's just gone 6:05. So we'll meet back here at 6:15 and start with item 10 then. Okay, so we'll adjourn for a few moments. Okay, members, that's 6:15 now. So if we're all back sitting at our screens, we'll try and recommence. So Paula, if you're ready to take item 10, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And the purpose of this report is to outline how we plan to progress a recent council motion, which includes the development of a pilot programme to support a 4-day work resource, to the procurement of an external resource to assist with the pilot programme. So in terms of the background, the Council recognises that a lack of work-life balance contributes to work-related stress, low productivity and even burnout amongst workers. The Council also accepts that there's a growing body of evidence that shows that moving to a 4-day working week enhances productivity and contentment among workers. So over the last couple of months, we've carried out some research into companies where a 4-day working week has been a success, and this has included reviewing trials which have taken place both internationally and nationally. And these studies sort of outline in detail issues that need to be considered in order to implement a 4-day working week. So initial discussions have also taken place with the trade unions in relation to how to progress a 4-day working week within the organisation. But in order to progress, it's recommended that external support is procured to assist us with the development of a pilot programme and identify the associate cost implications for the council. And this programme would look at how we can do it in a fair and transparent way across all the workforce. So at this stage, there will be financial implications associated with the procurement of an external resource, and we can provide further details at a later date. So it's recommended that members note the report and agree to the procurement of an external resource to assist with the pilot programme. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paula, for talking us through that item. First indicated speaker is Councillor Duffy. Sandra, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Paula, for the report. And I do welcome the progress that we can see today. It was a motion that was brought by my party colleague, Councillor Jackson, and I know that you have reported it there, but he himself had carried out quite a body of research into the benefits of a 4-day working week, both for employers and employees, and the difference that it made to workers in terms of the work-life balance, stress levels, their productivity and their overall job satisfaction was, I mean, it was evident for everyone to see. So I do welcome the fact that we are progressing this. It is good that we keep in contact with the unions to make sure that whatever we do is done in a fair way that our employees are happy with. But really happy to see this progressing, Paula, and happy to propose if it needs a proposer. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Sandra. Any other indicated speakers in this item? Alderman Devaney. Oh, sorry. Councillor Harkin first, then Alderman Devaney. Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, I'm glad to see this progressing as well. I did follow up with council officers to find out what was happening. As Councillor Duffy said, it was Councillor Jackson brought in this proposal about the 4-day week. I believe this part of it was an amendment that I brought in, but that's neither here nor there, because the main issue is about advancing workers' rights and seeing if we can do this as a council. So the one query I have is about the having an external organisation be recruited to help us along with this. Is this not something we can organise internally? Because maybe I can get a explanation as to why that is necessary. Surely there is different arrangements already that the council makes for some workers, depending on whether they work 20 hours a week or 40 hours a week. Because I wouldn't imagine this would be every single worker if it was a pilot program at the start. So I'm just curious why we feel it's necessary to go to some sort of outside group.
Okay, we'll come to that in due course. Councillor Harkin, thanks. Alderman Devaney, and then Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me and welcome the report coming forward here. And our party are very, very supportive of the recommendation here, and look, happy to second it. I think it has been proposed, and you know, anything that we do to enhance the workplace for employees is vitally important, so it is, and I think this is a good idea. And look, I do believe going to an outside body gives us that independence from anyone, and you know, can come back with a very clear view on it, because you know, those are the concerns of Councillor Harkin, but I'm happy that it goes out there, gives us that independence, so it does. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Morris. Councillor Mooney, Sean.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank the officer for the update and the report. I note that Councillor Jackson did bring this motion, and I think I spoke on it at full council on behalf of our party, but fully endorse the progress thus far. And I do, I suppose, I do concur slightly with Councillor Harkin, and the fact is that I would prefer there's a bit more detail as to why we would need an external consultant, but perhaps Paula has more information, and I could elaborate on that anyway. But by and large, thank you, and fully endorse the proposal so far. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Sean, for that. Paula, there's no other indicated speakers at this stage, so I'm going to bring you back in now. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair. In relation to the issues, okay, there are really two main reasons for bringing in an external resource. Firstly, just current resources within the HR section, and you know, it's particularly demanding at the minute. And secondly, you know, it is useful, you know, it is useful to get an external perspective on this, possibly from an organisation that's working with other organisations that have implemented this, and particularly if it's a pilot where we want to ensure, you know, that we're looking at the whole organisation. So just the benefit of using using an organisation externally that's already working with other organisations that have faced challenges around this issue, you know, we think would be particularly useful. So that's why we recommend the external resource.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that, policy. Councillor Mooney's comment in the chat box. Members, no other indicated speakers. I'm conscious Councillor Duffy has proposed this. Are we happy with, is there a seconder for it in the first instance?
Chair, I had seconded it.
You had seconded. Okay, thanks for that, Marsh. Members, are members content to move on with that item as agreed? Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing anyone else coming back in again, so appreciate that. Thank you, Paula, for that. That's item 10. Item 11 then is the dissolution of the Local Government Staff Commission.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to consider correspondence from the Department of Communities in relation to the dissolution of the Local Government Staff Commission, and the correspondence is attached there in Appendix 1. It's recommended that members consider the correspondence and endorse the suggested response. So the Local Government Staff Commission is an executive body, non-departmental public body, which was established under the Local Government Act 1972. And the role of the Staff Commission has been to exercise general oversight and make recommendations to councils and Northern Ireland Housing Executive on matters connected with recruitment, training and terms and conditions of officers. In October 2013, following consultation, it was announced then by the Environment Minister at that time that the Commission would be wound up in March 17, and then that decision was subsequently agreed by the Executive Committee at a meeting on the 19th of June 2014. However, due to the suspension of the Northern Ireland Assembly, you know, the relevant legislation wasn't in place, and the Commission wasn't wound up. So on the basis the DFC reconstituted the Commission membership with effect from April 17 up to the final dissolution date. So a management and dissolution plan was developed and to allow the Commission continue to implement its statutory duties and to allow staff or exit the organisation. And over the last couple of years, the number of staff within the Commission has reduced significantly, and a number of staff have left. And a lot of the non-statutory work that was done by the Commission over the years has now already transferred to local councils. But given the passage of time that has been involved since the initial consultation in 2012, the Minister has decided to carry out a follow-up consultation in order to ascertain if there are any reasons that the executive decision to dissolve the commission should be reconsidered. So again, we were asked for responses for the 26th of November, but this has been extended. So as an organisation, you know, we would acknowledge the support and expertise provided by the Commission over the years, but recognises that already much of the work that they have done has been passed to the individual councils, and a lot of the work is also collectively done by the regional PPMA, the People Managers Association, which comprises of the lead HR officers from the 11 councils. Again, you know, with if the dissolution does happen, you know, the main area the councils will have to consider how we will support is the appointment of senior officers, particularly chief executives, where to date, you know, the staff commission would have assisted with that process. So again, in those situations, it's likely that we would have to procure external support for those senior appointments. In terms of implications, we currently pay in the region of £23,000 per year for the operation of the staff commission. So if there was dissolution, this would be a saving to council on an annual basis. So it's recommended that we consider the correspondence that, you know, the points the points raised, and that we draft a response acknowledging the support that the staff commission has provided over the years, but continue to support the dissolution of the staff commission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Next indicated speaker, Councillor Farrell. Rory, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Paula. So proposed.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for the recommendation here?
I'll second it, Chair. Alderman Devaney.
Morris. Okay, thank you. And no other indicated speakers on that. So Paula, you can take that as approved. Members, that moves us on to the next item. So going to hand over to, let me see who's taking item 11. Oh, sorry, item 12. Ellen. Go ahead, Ellen.
Thank you, Chair. Purpose of this particular report is to advise elected members of the special meetings to be held at the first meeting at 2 p.m. on the 20th of February to posthumously admit Mr. Pat McManus to be an honorary freeman of Derry City and Strabane District, and also and also to seek elected members' views on the proposed arrangements. Now, as outlined in the report, this arises out of a motion that was passed by Council in June 2020, and that was to award the Freedom of Derry City and Strabane District to NHS nurse Mr. Pat McManus. Again, in terms of the report as well, the paragraph 2.2 outlines that the Freedom Award is based on the 2015 legislation, and also that the fact that being an honorary freedom of the borough doesn't confer any rights in terms of the recipient. Key issues addressed in the report are that in terms of the freedom and recognising citizens, this is a piece of work that has also been brought up in terms of our asset naming working group, and pending the outcome of the discussions there, and in recognising that we've had, you know, a delay in terms of this process because of COVID-19. This process identifies a number of arrangements to streamline the process going forward in terms of this particular award. And as I said, in terms of liaison with Mr. McManus's family, it's now been agreed to proceed with the conferment of the award on the 28th of February at 2 p.m. And it's currently understood that at this point in time, 22 family members will be travelling to the event. My understanding is most of those are from mainland Britain. Again, I would also highlight to members that in terms of the streamlining process, what normally happens is we require a special resolution to actually decide to confirm the reward and the award, and then there's another special council meeting to actually confer it. So on this occasion, what we're suggesting is that rather than two separate dates, that we actually put them back to back, and they take place consecutively, as I say, on the 28th. Now, the other important issue I think this report addresses, which I think we need to consider, is that at the time of writing, basically now, There's still a requirement for risk assessments and COVID precautions, and it actually isn't possible to commit to conducting full physical special council meetings. Accordingly, this paper proposes a hybrid meeting will be held, and that one representative from each party and one from the independent members be invited to attend the chamber physically. And in addition, elected members representing Mr. McManus's former DEA and/or members who have a personal interest are also invited to attend, subject to a maximum capacity of 15 elected members who will be seated with microphones in the chamber, and that includes the chair. Obviously, as I say, keen to have the participation of other elected members, and that will be facilitated through the webcasting, or sorry, through the WebEx software, and also public viewing will be possible through the council's YouTube channel. So again, as I say, the other issue there is subject to the prevailing risk assessment, and as members would be aware that there will be another review of the COVID regulations on the 10th of February. Members of Mr. McManus's family will be accommodated during the special meeting within the public gallery and/or the main hall, again subject to the numbers. And in the event that there are people in the main hall, there will be viewing facilities available through the large screen there. The proposal as well is that the mayoral reception takes place immediately after the special meetings. The recommendations in front of members today, therefore, is that members note the time and date of the special meetings to admit Mr. Pat McManus as a Freeman of Derry City and Strabane District, and that members agree that the special meetings are conducted consecutively in a hybrid format with members in attendance physically and remotely. That invitations are extended to attend physically to one representative from each party and one from the independent members. Also elected members of Mr. McManus's former DEA and/or members who have a personal interest, and that finally there that nominations are made via party leaders or independent members as soon as practical to facilitate arrangements. And in addition, those members with a personal interest in attendance should forward details to the mayor. Thank you, members.
Okay, Ellen, thank you very much for talking us through those pages. Opening it up to the floor for any commentary in relation, I suppose, specifically to item 5, the recommendations. Councillor McHugh, and then Councillor Edwards. Yep, go ahead, Rory. Then Stephen.
I'm all good. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. Mayor, just on behalf of my own party, we'd be content with the recommendations. I think it's the least as a council we could afford on Mr. McManus, who so selflessly put himself in the front line, stayed true, I suppose, in many ways to the Hippocratic Oath, where despite his own medical condition, he put his life on the line to protect others during the pandemic. So we welcome the fact that council are acknowledging his contribution, and in many ways I suppose it's also an acknowledgement of the wider NHS worker who, as I've stated earlier, have put themselves so selflessly on the front line against the fight against COVID. So happy to propose, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor McHugh. Stephen, go ahead.
Thanks for letting me in on behalf of the SLP as well. We're happy to support the recommendations in the report. Pat gave over 40 years of service as a nurse in Staffordshire, and he gave his life to helping others. I think it's only right that his contribution is acknowledged here locally, especially given that his hometown is Strabane. Pat and his family are well known in the wider Strabane area, and I'm delighted that he is getting this posthumous recognition that he deserves later in the month. Pat's late mother Peggy was also a councillor in the former Strabane and District Council, and the family has done a lot to help the lives of people locally. Pat continued on with that work by giving back to his own community, and it's only right that we see Pat being awarded Freedom of Strabane in Derry later this month. Pat's work also exemplified the work of all our health service staff and our carers locally, who have done an amazing job over the pandemic, working in increasingly intolerable conditions and putting their lives before everyone else. Their sacrifice
Sorry, we
cannot
seem
go
to have lost
unnoticed, and they
Councillor.
deserve
Oh, you're back. Sorry.
recognition and commitment for their commitment and dedication. I'm happy to support the recommendations, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Edwards. We did lose some of it, certainly at my end in the audio towards the end of your contributions, but we got the majority of it. Councillor Gallagher, Paul's next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, for letting son. I'm not on this, so I can't make any recommendations, but I can just say thanks to Ellen and the other officers for pulling together the report and very balanced report. And I know there's been major difficulties of trying to implement the motion that got passed with the current predicament we find ourselves in with the pandemic. But glad to see the report coming in and glad to see that it's been worked through. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. Alderman McClintock, go ahead, Hilary.
Thank you, Chair. And just on behalf of the DUP, thank Ellen for bringing this report before us. It's no easy task to try and organise something like this at this time. And I think it's very important that we mark this. It's a very important occasion, both for the family of Pat McManus, and it also brings some recognition to all those others who have been on the front line during the whole pandemic. So happy with the recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, everyone. There's no other indicated speakers. Everybody is in support of this, so I'm going to take it as approved. And I would draw people's attention to 5.4, where it does say about bringing nominations forward as soon as practical. So if interested councillors can make themselves known to their party leaders, and independent members do the same through to Ellen as soon as possible, that would be appreciated, just to give everybody maximum time to get organised for this event. Ellen, is there anything else you need on that item? And if not, happy to move on.
No, thank you, Chair. No, happy to move on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are you taking the next item, item 13?
I am indeed, and the purpose of this particular report, Chair, is to advise elected members of NILGA's policy and communication guidance note regarding the pre-election period of heightened political sensitivity, and also to seek members' approval to the commencement of that period of heightened political sensitivity from Monday the 28th of March. The report highlights that there's no specific legislation or codes of practice relating to what is commonly known as the purdah period. So consequently, NILGA have provided this guidance without prejudice as an informal practical advice for councillors, local government officers and partner organisations in the run-up to the May elections. The guidance notes have been provided at Appendix 1 for members' consideration. And as I say, these highlight that the latest date that there's NILGA suggests that we can go into that heightened period of sensitivity is Monday the 28th. And that also that pre-election good practice highlights that, you know, the activities for restriction are wider than just publicity. And the report itself goes on to highlight key areas as outlined in paragraph 3.3. The recommendation in front of members, therefore, today is that you note the contents of that particular guidance document and also approve the commencement of a period of heightened political sensitivity from Monday the 28th of March. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, appreciate that, Ellen. Thank you. It's been proposed in the chat box by Alderman Devaney. Is there a seconder for it, please?
I'll second that. Chair Martin, I think we may have skipped past an item there in relation to the car park, or maybe I'm looking at a different set of papers from everybody else.
Yeah, I think you are, Councillor Boyle. We're on. There was different variants of paper sent out, but we're on version 3.
All right, okay. I'll take it as I find it from here on and then. But
yeah, you're happy to second this item.
I will certainly second that item. Yes, I understand all of that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Members, any other indicated speakers on this item? Alderman Hussey, go ahead, Derek.
Thanks, and thanks, Alan. It's just a quick query. Is this dependent on each local authority to actually adopt this? Or could we face a situation where we in Derry and Strabane would adopt it, maybe Fermanagh and Omagh didn't adopt it? And given the constituency of West Tyrone runs across the two, you could have neighbouring constituencies with different policies, or is it something that is likely to be universally adopted? Thank you.
Ellen, do you want to try and give an answer to that?
Sorry, through you, Chair. I'm actually having a wee bit of IT difficulties myself. Alderman Hussey's correct. The parliamentary and council boundaries are actually different, but we're working on the basis that, as I say, NILGA have been requested to produce this and provide advice to councils. And indeed, as I say, we're taking their good practice advice in this particular context, that we put a period of sensitivity in place, and that the latest date that we can do that is the 28th of March. As I say, I'm not sure if there will be differences between different councils, but certainly the good practice advice is that we do have one, and as I say, they've also highlighted that 28th of March as a date. Thank you, members.
Through you, Chair, thanks, Alan. I'm trusting that others will do the right thing. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Okay, the Chief Executive, I think, is looking to comment on this as well. So go ahead, John.
Yeah, thank you for bringing me in, Chair. It's just to reinforce, just in case there's any doubt, that we're not suggesting a period of purdah for council. It's simply a period of political heightened sensitivity. So it's not the same as the situation we would face if we were going forward into a council election. So we would still be proposing, just to reinforce what Ellen has said, that committees and full council meetings run as is normally planned during that period. So it's not the same as a council election. Just to reinforce that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I appreciate the additional clarification, John, as well. Okay, thank you, Ellen and John, for that. No other indicated speakers. I'm assuming everyone is content with this. I haven't heard anybody speaking against it. So we'll move on to item 14, which is the Local Government Boundary Commission revised recommendations.
And through you, Chair, this report advises members of the revised recommendations, as you've indicated, of the Local Government Boundary Commissioner and the public consultation on these revised recommendations in respect of the review of the 11 council boundaries and also their constituent wards. As highlighted in the background, members are provided there with the process to date, and also highlights that on the 18th of January, the Commissioner published her revised recommendations, including maps in response to the written and oral submissions received on the provisional recommendations and taken into consideration the views of the Assistant Commissioners. In essence, as highlighted in the report, the revised recommendations reaffirm the previous recommendations that have been put forward, and that the public consultation is also now open up until the 1st of March for written submissions. The recommendations in front of members this afternoon is that members note the contents of the report and respond as appropriate, either on an individual or party basis as so desired. Thank you, members.
Okay, thank you for that, Ellen. No indicated speakers at this stage, but I'm sure people will be able to follow that recommendation to make their own representations directly if needed. So thank you, Ellen, for those various reports that we've just gone through. Members, that concludes the open for decision items. We're moving to the open for information items, item 15 and 16. So happy to take any comments that people have now on relation to those items if you wish. Councillor Heaney on item 15. Go ahead, Connor.
Thank you, Chair. It's just simply they welcome this. It's a very popular area of the town. So this is a good move, and I'm really delighted to see it. So that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Connor. Members, I'm not seeing anyone else indicating a wish to speak, so there's no confidential items for today, so that brings today's meeting to a close. Can I thank everybody for your attendance virtually, and hope to see us all in person in March when we recommence our meetings in physical form or hybrid form. So wish you all a happy evening, and thanks for your attendance today.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.